And I think there are ways that if you communicate the right way with people, that you can find new and interesting ways to build, even when it might seem on the surface that you have very different positions on an issue. I have sort of 4 ways I frame it. Is it a toy? Is it a tool? Are you trying to build community? Or are you just a feature for someone else's product? That's the question I ask every AI company I meet. Which one of these are you trying to be?
My guest today is the CEO of the Merlin Network of Independent Music Labels, Jeremy Sirota. Merlin is a member-based organization with digital licensing rights for hundreds of independent labels and distributors in nearly every country around the globe. That makes up 15% of the recorded music market. Under Jeremy's leadership, Merlin has entered into new partnerships and creative programs to help its members take advantage of the latest technologies and licensing opportunities. During the interview, we talked about the unique position of Merlin in the music industry, the impact of AI on the industry, the introduction of the Merlin Connect program to simplify music licensing, the role of technology in music consumption, and much more. I spoke with Jeremy from his office in New York. We haven't talked since 2021, and I know a lot has changed since then. So a lot of big changes happened at Merlin for sure. So fill us in.
Thanks. I like that you just jumped right into it. I'm a big fan of that as a New Yorker. I'm just getting into it.
Yeah, right.
Any number of things. We're on our 3rd year of Engage, which is our mentorship program for the next generation of female leaders. We are a year into our Insights initiative. We built this data warehouse from scratch and really excited to be rolling out more actionable insights to our members. We've on our first year now, almost 12 months into the cycle of our new initiative called Connect, which I hope I talked about with you, which is really targeted at startups and scale-ups about making music more accessible in every single way possible. And then, depending on when this comes out, about a week or 2 ago, I announced that my tenure is going to come to an end at the end of this year. It will be 6 years here at Merlin. This has been a job of a lifetime. It's been a complete and total privilege. And I was reflecting a lot recently as I made the announcement. And I was thinking about what it was like when I showed up. And I remember what I showed up to was a company that had this incredibly strong mission. It had the trust of its members, and it had this culture of kindness. And those are 3 incredible pillars that are really hard to build from scratch or to rebuild if you don't have it. And I felt very thankful to take that over from the founder, CEO, Charles Caldis. And so I was thinking about, okay, well, what have I brought to the table since I came here over the last 6 years? And what I think I've delivered to Merlin is, one is thinking broader about the mission. Right? All these initiatives I mentioned weren't in place before. So there is a broader mission than what we had been doing at that point, which was really just how do we empower independence at any level? Does it make sense for Merlin to step in at a collective level to empower? And so that was one area. The second area was really modernizing and sort of transforming the company. We've rebuilt every single one of our tech platforms from scratch, as well as built 2 brand new ones, including a data warehouse and a delivery system for music. So that's something I brought. And then the other one was really just creating a sustainable company. At every board meeting, I would talk about de-risking Merlin, right? Building Merlin to outlast me, not because I was trying to get myself out of a job, but I think that's such a smart way for a CEO to approach a company, which is, how do I empower teams? How do I build mindsets so that this organization can not just survive, but thrive even when I'm gone? And I'm kind of excited to see who's going to be the next CEO and what the next chapter they're going to write.
Well, we'll get into that in a second, but you just mentioned something before that I want to cover. When did you start? 2016, right?
Oh, gosh, not that far. January 2020, 45 days before we shut down the offices for COVID.
So in 2020, correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed to me like Merlin was just an organization of indie labels. Mm-hmm. And now you've expanded that because now it's companies that are also music services companies as well, right?
At its core, our membership is still independent labels, right? Our membership is still, independent distributors. We've added any number. I was just on the phone with Polyvinyl Records recently, or Network from in Canada, or Unified from Australia who's joined. So that's still the core of the membership, are those labels who represent independent artists. What we really try to do in terms of what I was saying earlier, stretch the dough, is build relationships. So whether that's relationships on what we're doing around data, whether that's relationships around what we're doing with Connect, is trying to engage the industry in a different way and create just, in some ways, it's thinking more like an investor. I thought about Merlin, I thought we need to grow our portfolio of services. What is our suite of services we can offer? We don't charge anything more for them. Right? We still charge the exact same thing. We charge an admin fee on revenues we collect, and it's the same exact fee for everyone. It's 1.5%. And if we have any excess money, we pay that back to the members as a rebate. So how do we take this flat static fee we charge everyone, and how do we build into that and push into the corners even further? And that's really what I brought to this company, is just that expanded mindset. And now that flows through to everyone who works here. They all think in those terms. Right? It's not, could we do this or should we do this? Well, people let us do it. It's more of what is possible. And then think about, is it worth the time? Is it worth the resources? Right? I call it the magic, wave the magic wand exercise. If I could do anything, what would it be? And it's amazing the different answers you get when you ask it that way.
Well, certainly helping your members by providing more services, I think, is something that's super useful both to them. I mean, it's also a nice carrot for them to be, stay a member, become a member. But one of the things about Merlin that's, I think, so fascinating is the fact that you've managed to collect, or your predecessors managed to collect all of these indie labels, and I don't know if unionization is the right word, but an association where it's really powerful. Right? It's 15% of the music business now, right?
That's right. I'd go even a step further, which is many of these companies are competitors with each other.
Yeah.
They come from now 70 different countries around the world. So that means you have a lot of cultural differences. And then even further, many of them have very different business models. Some are very traditional artist signings. Others do joint ventures. Some are even started as artist management companies and now provide services more like a label. So they're all kind of coming at it from a different direction. But what makes it all work is that Merlin sits at the intersection of these companies, right at the center. And those factors, those things that Charles, the former CEO, brought, that trust from the members, this really strong mission concept that the founders brought, that still resonates and permeates throughout what we do 16 years later. And it really serves as that linchpin. They know that Merlin can be trusted. They know that we have only their interests at heart. They know we don't have a profit motive. We don't have investors looking for an exit. Like when we're doing deals with, services like Apple and Spotify, or newer services like Canva and Twitch, that's all about how can we create the most value for them and create the most access. I used to call it a unicorn, this organization. There's nothing quite like it. Now I like using the word narwhal. First, because it's just a fun word to say and it kind of makes you laugh, because narwhals, you're like, when you first learn about them, you're like, this doesn't exist. This can't be real.
Yeah, right.
And that's how I feel about Merlin. Like, it can't exist. Like, no way this thing exists and is real. And to me, it is indispensable to the music marketplace. Right? The world would be a lesser place if Merlin didn't exist. And that kind of pulls at you. I will say, over the years, I've had some 3 a.m. wake-ups where I feel this like incredible responsibility, not just as a CEO and to my team, but to our members in the larger music industry. And I guess maybe I won't miss those 3 a.m. wake-up calls, but I'll still be thinking fondly come January 1 next year about this organization and cheering them on from the sidelines.
You mentioned about how there are different business models. Does that cause a conflict?
You would think it would. And in fact, I get asked this question fairly frequently from the board. How do you reconcile all these different needs? And that's actually always been a part of the independent space. It's what makes it so interesting. It's what, why so much incredible music comes from independents is they're willing to take more risks, right? They're willing to support different types of genres. Sometimes they see around corners when other people aren't looking. And that also applies to their mindset about maybe what they prioritize from a digital partnership. Once again, but I come back to always, I say this to the board all the time, what Merlin does is by having that trust, even if maybe the exact interest they want isn't achieved or isn't represented, or we can't prioritize that. They know that we are looking out for the greater good, number one. And number two, they also know that through Merlin, they're always going to be doing better than if they did it themselves. This is the value of collective bargaining. Right? You're going to get a better deal because of the collective, but also because we provide value to the partners. Right? They're not just giving up money because of the kindness of their hearts. They want to see a value exchange also. And that's been a real big focus for us these last 6 years, is providing that value, whether it's the efficiency, it's whether the support we provide to them so they don't have to do it direct, whether it's helping our members to more lean into platforms, because all these platforms want independence, their artists to lean in. So that's part of it as well.
You mentioned collective bargaining, and you've been very successful at that, except for TikTok.
Yeah, that was, I would absolutely say that was a disappointment for us and for the community. Without going deep into it, the reason I use the term partnership is that a partnership requires people on both sides to be willing to partner. And Merlin is someone who's willing to partner. And we've had really good relationships with the other Chinese services. We have a great relationship with Tencent and NetEase. We have great relationships with Spotify, with YouTube, with Apple, with Canva. We came on the backs of Universal going to war with TikTok. The NMPA got into a tiff with TikTok. And, I hope at some point they start to think that music has value and that the words they say publicly match what they say behind the scenes.
You're a diplomat.
I want to create value. I didn't come into this job to, if I need to fight for, fair compensation, for representation, for access here, of course I'll do that. But, I like to build. And I think there are ways that if you communicate the right way with people, that you can find new and interesting ways to build, even when it might seem on the surface that you have very different positions on an issue.
Let's talk about Connect, because I know you're very excited about that. How does that benefit your members? Or is it only for a certain segment of members that can take advantage of it? Or is this something that everybody can benefit from?
Everyone can benefit from it. It's trying to solve a fundamental problem that's plagued the music industry forever, which is in a world in which you think licensing digitally is simple. I always like to remind people, it's really simple. Pressing a CD, putting it in a jewel case with an insert and putting some shrink wrap around it and putting it on a truck and shipping it to a retailer and selling it. And you know why that's simple? Because we've been spending hundreds of years selling physical products. And we have a lot of experience doing that and how it works. And then you get into the digital space, and every time you look at it, you're like, this should be so easy. It's digital, you can just press buttons, and anyone can spin up an app with AI now. And in fact, it's, for whatever reason, I can't quite find the analogy yet. It's really complicated. And that's what Connect is trying to do. It's trying to look at the licensing to early stage companies, to startups and scale ups, and say, how do we just simplify all of this? How do we simplify the licensing process, the access, who do you even reach out to? Right? What's the value? Some of these platforms say, yeah, I keep hearing music can be really impactful. I don't really get the value. You're like, oh, right. Emotional connection, cultural cachet, shall I go on? And that's because a lot of these are engineers or product managers who just don't or haven't worked in music or don't understand how powerful it can be. So that we just want to simplify the understanding, the education, and then the licensing, and then take it a step further, the operations. How do you make delivering the music easier for our members? Right? That's where Connect comes in place. We have a central hub that validates and normalizes everything. And then we flipped it on its head. Instead of a complex DDEX integration, which God bless the DDEX organization, they are trying to simplify it every single time, and they're doing a great job, but it's still complicated. And especially for a startup who may not come from music. And what do they need to put their resources to? Well, pivoting 5 different times because the business model changes. Well, we've built an API. So if you can manage webhooks, you can pull content. So instead of an integration, there is no integration. It's just an API pull. And so it's just like at every level, how do we just simplify all of this? And then the element that really came into play that made this all click was instead of thinking like a licensor, we think like an investor. So what does an investor do? Investor brings capital usually, of course, Our capital is our members' music, the artists and their music. That's the capital we bring. And then with that, we can bring just the executive team alone has a lot of experience in the music industry. And then I think about my operations team and my analytics team and my commercial partnerships team, and then expand that out. And imagine if we put in place an advisory team from our membership. And instead of just, here's your content and pay me money, which yes, of course, yes, content, money. It's also, how can we help you succeed? And so we really want to foster this next generation of platforms. We are seeing a slowdown. You're seeing so many people interested in music, but you're still seeing on the digital side, almost 80, 90+% of digital revenue coming from forced services. So how do we stretch that dough? And that's what we're trying to do. And we're really putting our time, energy, and resources into it. We did an AI pilot with a company last year, which is moving into a phase 2. We did a deal with a company called Nina Protocol, which is all about building direct-to-fan connections. We have another one in the pipeline that's close to being signed. And we have dozens who've reached out to us who are interested in what this can bring to them and their company. So there's really something here. And what I really want to do is partner with some more. We have like our phase 2, which is because we're delivering fully cleared rights, sound recordings and publishing. I really want to start partnering with some more publishers to expand the scope of the content and really start to grow this to obviously benefit our members, but really to build something new and unique for the whole music industry.
You mentioned AI. So let's go there for a second, because you can look at it from two different ways and from an extreme sense, basically. Where do you come down on that in terms of how it's impacting the music industry right now? Because there are many people that say, well, this is extremely negative because of the AI slop that's being distributed. And there are others that say, well, this is just another tool, using it to help me do whatever I need to do in the music business. Where do you come down on that?
Okay. Oof. It's like a dartboard. And depending on what dart you have in your hand, you're going to hit a different part of the board. So let's start with some positives, some negatives, and some opportunities. So the positives are, it's an incredible tool. I use it within my workflow as a force multiplier, whether that's to gain efficiencies in my work, whether that's to automate, to do research. And it takes time, right? I've had to put a lot of time into learning how to use it. It's, someone once compared it to, Seth Godin compared it to a PhD. He's like, you don't just show up and suddenly you're an expert in, colonial history. You have to spend upwards of a decade to develop that expertise. Well, why would this tool that's so powerful be any different? And that's what you're seeing a lot of artists use to enhance the creative process. Not just create music, but to enhance, right? I want to test out hundreds of different sounds to see what can work in this song. It's like Ableton on steroids. You see a lot of rights holders build it into their workflows and processes. How do I create customized marketing campaigns for 100 different digital platforms out there that all do something slightly different? And if you don't customize, you're not going to succeed. That's really exciting. We're doing it right now. We're using it to build. We have a data warehouse. We use Tableau, which is a very sort of power user tool. We're building out AI data visualizations right now. How can I just do a prompt to visualize data? Right. So there's all these ways within music to improve the creative process and how you operate. Where do you see the challenges? Well, the challenges come from, number one, AI companies that are building large language models that are not respecting copyright, that are not valuing human creativity, and believe that they have an unfettered right to build and launch products without providing compensation, attribution, and consent. And right now, it seems like big numbers and it seems very scary, but really you're just kind of seeing the long tail eating the long tail, right? For any of this AI, pure AI content, just prompt produce that's coming into these platforms. Either some of them are taking it down, trying to block it, or it's just earning pennies and it's pulling from other things that were earning pennies, which is not great, right? Pennies can add up, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But we're not seeing sort of a material issue yet. And so that's then the future. I have sort of 4 ways I frame it. Is it a toy? Is it a tool? Are you trying to build community? Or are you just a feature for someone else's product? And that's the question I ask every AI company I meet. Which one of these are you trying to be? And they say, well, we want to be everything. I was like, oh, okay, that's like, no. Then stack rank them. Which one's at the top of the pyramid? And What I'm seeing is that there are AI companies want to be in the music space, who want to commercialize a product, right? Gen AI is really what we're talking about. And I'm trying to find the ones who want to be on the right side of history about copyright, human creativity, and what's good for us as a society. And I believe they're out there. I believe we're talking to some of them. And I believe before I exit stage left, I'd like to be a leader in this space to create a better world for not just users and fans, but really for artists, right? To ensure that there's a future for them that is better.
As you're talking here, something dawned on me, and it's that if you're a professional, you can certainly use an AI tool as a tool and you can get a lot out of it. And I don't think anybody has a problem with that. It's the consumer part that people have a problem with. So, for instance, you go to Boomy or any of those and say, give me an Elton John song. And of course, it's not going to do Elton John now because you can say something like that and you'll get some AI slop, essentially. That's the problem that we're having. So it's on the consumer side. It's not so much on the business side of things. But you're approaching it the right way because you understand exactly where that is, where that intersection is.
That's right. And by the way, I mean, there's a whole other world here I skipped over, which is, and this is happening, whether it's the RIAA's lawsuit against some of the AI companies, the publishers' lawsuits against some of these AI companies. You have organizations like A2IM here in the US or AIM in the UK, and Paula, obviously the RIAA and IPI. All of them are taking action at a government level, at a regulatory level, to really explain, to educate, and help to support these regulators and government officials to understand the opportunities, but also the risks. And so that's also happening and things that we support behind the scenes as well. So what I'm talking about is sort of how do we recognize that in this space, absolutism is not a strategy. If AI is a foundational layer, it's like a middleware almost to everything we do now. It's like the internet. And you would think most people would understand that, but there's a lot of it's like, oh, isn't this just like NFTs or Web3? It's like, no. Yeah. Oh, it's going to go away. This is just the latest fad. No, like you're not getting it. So you have to acknowledge it's here to stay, whether you like it or not. And the flip side are all the elements I mentioned about how we need to educate and push and prod AI companies as well. And that's why it's so critical to find the ones who have the right mindset. Because then what you're thinking about is, okay, now we're talking about what kind of products can you launch? What kind of guardrails do we need in place? The one you gave, Elton John, no, that's not allowed. Unless the artist wants it, which some might. No, like those are the things you need to stop. And then what's the proper compensation for those rights? And then you start to narrow in on a path. Instead of just, I don't like it, I don't want this, you start to be forward-looking and say, how do I solve for this if it's not going away?
Okay, let's put AI aside because I think people would mostly pick this as maybe the greatest challenge facing the music industry today. What do you think, aside from AI, are the greatest challenges facing Merlin and the music industry?
Let's start with Merlin. Probably just the greatest challenge is just the pace of acquisitions and consolidation happening within the industry. And I find it problematic as obviously the CEO of Merlin, the most important organization representing independence in the world. There's a reason I'm in this role, why I was so excited to get this role, which is I am tone deaf. I cannot play an instrument, and I can never remember lyrics to songs. Like I sing 80 songs and my daughter's like, Dad, I'm 13 and even I know the lyrics. How can you not do this? I said, so I just have this like utter respect for artists and what they can do. And I realized, okay, the way I can help is in my role and what I do. And if we go back to that concept that independent labels have always sort of represented these, unique voices, right? Anything that's ever streamed upwards into a major has always started as an independent. And if you lose that fertile ecosystem, it's going to become T.S. Eliot. It's going to be like a barren wasteland because you're not going to have this really interesting creative experiences happening and being supported at this layer here. So that's number one that I think about a lot as both Merlin and as just a fan. And then the other one that concerns me that I was actually just riffing on last night with a friend was, where's the new monetization? Streaming continues to grow. It is starting to slow, especially in mature countries. You're seeing the pace within different growth markets also not quite capitalizing on the opportunity. That's everyone's been talking about India as the new growth opportunity. Everyone kind of stopped talking about India. Not because it's not a huge opportunity, it's just become difficult to monetize fans and users. So as you look at all that, I don't know what's next. And that's worrying because if the growth starts to slow, but you start to continue to have, and this is happening on the songwriter side, just more artists, more songwriters, more splits, right? It becomes more and more challenging for people to have successful music careers, piled on top of what AI challenges, right? It's going to present challenges, right? There's opportunities,
Yeah,
but there's going to be challenges. And so I can't see in the next 5 years where the next monetization is going to come from that's going to have a material impact. I see a bunch of diversification and fragmentation and exploration, which is why we launched Connect, is to try to seed those opportunities. But the next big thing, like streaming or social, it's really hard to see it. And everyone says, well, every time we can't see it, something new comes. This is the first time I'm really struggling to see that. And that's why I want to be so in front of AI, because it's the one area that presents a big opportunity. Besides, listen, we've been talking about gaming for 20 years, right? And still no one has tapped into that as a huge opportunity. I think there's a huge opportunity in the advertising space with these low level ads that the mom and pops do to be able to provide a higher quality music than you could get from a production music company. So really difficult problems to solve. But if you look at the revenue in play, it's a really big opportunity. And so that's just a little bit of a around the horn for you there.
One of the interesting things about the music business is it's usually the first to adopt a new technology. And you can go back to wax cylinders on this. Whenever there's something new, the music industry embraces it. And as you say, I've been looking as well to see if there's something on the horizon that's a possibility. And there's nothing. I mean, the big thing that lately record labels have been pushing have been immersive music. And the average consumer could care less about that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've been through this with 5.1 surround already. Once upon a time, it's just history repeating itself 20 years later. People don't care about that. They don't care about quality, sound quality as much. A new format might be, but there's nothing on the horizon, as you say. And you would be the first to know.
I'd like to think so. I would hope they would come to us first. You get out there in public, and I'm saying the opposite of what most people say. Most people will get up here and be asked about the future, and they'll be like, oh, if you look back over the last 10 years, it's going to be AR, it's going to be VR, it's going to be NFTs, it's going to be Web3. And I sometimes get accused of being my someone who works for me called me a JRE once. I was like, JRE? Man, I should know this acronym. I'm much older than this person. It's like, what does that mean? He's like, jaded record exec. I was like, oh. And I was like, okay, harsh, but also fair. I'll take it. And I was very suspicious of AR, VR. I was very suspicious of NFTs. I was very suspicious about Web3. And, I can be more open and honest because I don't have shareholders. I don't have an investor class I have to report to. I have members who I need to speak the truth to about the reality of what it means to operate sometimes a small, medium business and try to figure out how to operate in a space that's increasingly more complex, more fragmented, more challenging to break through in. And so for me, my members listen to me. And so if I say something, they're going to look at that and be like, oh, we need to lean into this. Oh, we need to do something here. Right? We send a lot of signals. We don't like to send noise out there. We like to send signals. And so at one level, I've probably sounded pretty jaded going back even to my 2 years at Meta when they were trying to do stuff in AR, VR. I was like, I don't know if people want this that much. It's interesting. But then you go back to those sort of 4 pillars I said. Is it a feature? Is it a community? Is it a tool? Or is it a toy? And a lot of these over the years have been toys. And that's where we need to be careful is sometimes when you get on the cutting edge, you fall off and you're putting time and energy and resources into something that's not going to deliver. And so you want to find a way to balance testing what's new, but not over-resourcing against it. That was part of the premise of Connect, mean, that's part of the premise why we're exploring these AI data visualizations. Instead of building these complex SQL codes to deliver everything you could ever need, and each one's going to be a different way. It's like, well, what if you could just prompt it? Like, that's a whole lot easier. And what if we could then do training courses on prompting? I heard Sherry Yu once said, boring is back. I thought that was a great.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
It was good. My version is a little bit more positive, future looking, which is operational rigor matters. Like, the future is going to be owned by those who are rigorous about how they run the operations of their businesses. And I sometimes liken small independents or even medium-sized independents, 50, 100, 200 employees, to a restaurant. The difference between a wildly successful year and bankruptcy can just be 5%. And operational rigor can deliver that for you. Acting, operating smarter, better processes, automating, creating efficiencies, not so you can reduce headcount, but so you can put that headcount towards that white glove treatment that artists and artist managers care about. It's not sexy to talk about that, but it's so essential for the way we are as an industry these days.
Last question, Jeremy. What's the one thing that you wish people knew about you or about what you do that they don't understand?
That's a good one. I like this question. I actually give you a funny one. This one, my daughter really captured for me. Partly this comes from my legal training. Right? Lawyers tend to say things once, twice, a third time, and then by the fourth, you're like, shut up, I got it. And partly from, it's just a really complex world, and it's not easy to always explain things. And so I've tended to over-explain, but it's because I care so much. And I had one of my more enlightening moments of leadership from my daughter, who one day, she was 10, so this was 2022. We were kind of still in the midst of COVID, spending a lot more time at home. And I came in to give her some really, really important advice. And she just turned to me and said with these 6 devastating words, she's like, "Dad, no more TED Talks today." And I just realized, I was like, yeah, you're right. And I do that, and I sometimes go too far, but it's because I really care and I'm passionate about it. But I realize I can be sometimes overbearing and too much, but it comes from a good place. But my daughter, my then 10, now 13-year-old daughter, has really helped to rein me in.
Oh, yeah, crystallizes everything, doesn't it?
It really does.
Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@bobbyowsinski.com. You can also learn all about the latest in music, audio, and production news, and find out about openings for my latest online classes at bobbyowsinski.com. This is Bobby Owsinski. I will see you next time.